Hey friends, welcome back to the Freedom Equation podcast.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. We are going to be talking over the next couple of episodes about some common myths that we kind of had to break for ourselves that hold people back from having a freedom mindset.
Yep, there are things I definitely think if you're listening to this episode or watching this episode, there are going to be myths that you either 100% can relate to and realize they were the game changers for you, or you're going to say, that's it. That's what's holding me back.
The aha moment.
I'm convinced that these things will absolutely help you, so I really encourage you to listen to these next couple episodes. They're going to be a little bit shorter, topic by topic, but I really think they'll be huge for you. So, ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, so myth number one is the more I work, the more money I'll make, the more freedom I'll have.
Well,
What's your first thought when I say that?
parts of those are true.
What parts?
But not all. I feel like not all of them at once. It's like if you work harder, yes, you'll make more money. Doesn't mean you'll have more freedom. If you have more freedom, doesn't mean you'll actually make more money. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there's I think there's truth to all those. Say them again. Let's break them down one at a time.
The more I work, the more money I'll have, the more freedom I'll have.
So definitely, the more you work doesn't always translate to more money because some people aren't good at actually selling the work that they even do. So they could work their tail off and not actually make any money doing it.
Right, because they're not good at marketing. Yeah, it's true.
So I think that could be definitely one myth is making sure that you actually work smart and make sure that you actually are good at selling what you're working on. Because I know a lot of people that are super hard workers. It doesn't mean that doesn't even mean they're trying to make money with it, right? It's like but the freedom side for sure, I think is definitely not as equated with money as people think. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today because freedom definitely doesn't just come from money.
No,
in fact,
for
sometimes
sure.
it's way the polar opposite.
I agree. One thing I wrote down was even when you're building from the ground up, like if I could start my business all over again, I would prioritize my priorities from the very beginning. And because I really do believe that if you go into business with the mindset of the more money that I make, the more freedom that I'll have, you're constantly, there's always more money to make.
Yeah.
So then you're forever, it's like this never ending goal. And before you know it, like I've seen this happen so many times where people make a ton of money and then they lose all their relationships. They lose their marriage. They lose their relationship with their kids. So it doesn't, you have to make sure that you know what freedom is defined for you. So that way, even when the very beginning, when you're starting your business, like how can you prioritize your priorities?
Yeah. I think it goes along the lines of that. It's just when you make a lot of money, I think we might have talked about this before, but you just continue to raise the bar of what you need to make.
Yeah.
And if you make more money, but then live to that new lifestyle, then you have to make more money. And then you have to work harder and work more to make more money. Then you make more money and you buy more things. So like that's the freedom comes from. It's like if you get a raise is really great at first because it's a difference in money that you didn't have.
Right.
But if because of that raise, you now are buying the things that you couldn't buy, now it's no longer a raise. Now it's your standard again.
Correct.
So that's, and it's really hard because it's easy to say like, okay, well just set an exact spot that says when you get to this spot, you can slow down. That's easy to say. It's not as easy for people, including myself at times, to actually put that into practice because there's no doubt that like money can let you do some fun things.
Oh, 100%.
Like money's not a bad thing. And I'm totally okay with people that make as much money as they want. Like you deserve, like if you work hard, you deserve it. That's fine.
Yes.
The problem is if you get to, like you said, if you're modeling people that are incredibly rich, but you don't realize that they have a failing or horrible marriage, they have no relationship with their kids, no one likes working with them. Is that who you want to model?
Right.
So the freedom side, I look at it that hopefully, even what this podcast can do is to kind of show you that we're all about working hard, hustling hard, building huge businesses. I want you to be a billionaire, but not at the expense of things. And I feel like that's what people don't think about enough. And that's just not okay because that hustle culture, I feel like, has gotten to this idea of just don't stop. And if someone says slow down, like let them, I don't know, like.
Yeah.
Because there's certain people that you'll look at that might be single or they might not be married at all. And so they travel nonstop, they speak nonstop. It's like, great. And that's great. And they're not actually sacrificing anything to do that. So it's fantastic.
Right.
But the person that has a family and values other things, they're going to get themselves in trouble if they look at it like, man, I feel like I'm far behind that person. Yeah, but they can do that. You can't.
Right. It's true. And even the person that is single, because I've been single for so long when I was building my businesses, it's still so important too, because let's say you're single for a while and you're doing all of these things, right? You have like whatever, no limits to anything, no personal responsibility. That's actually not very good for you, because when you do step into responsibility, it totally changes your mindset because there tends to be resentment that develops. So it's so important to still, even if you have the time to 24/7 do your business, I would say don't. Think about the things like, okay, maybe you're not in a relationship right now, but you value the relationship with your friends. So how can you prioritize them? How can you prioritize your family? And, you know, maybe going to see your brother who lives in Ohio.
Right.
Things along those lines. So even in those situations, people get in these mindsets that don't serve them long term. They think it's going to be fine for right now. But it's so important to remember, even the way that the brain works is it's based on finding patterns, and it likes to stick with those patterns. That's why habits are really hard to break, is because habits are hardwired into our system. Same thing with your mindsets about work. So how you think about work right now, if you're single, is probably how you're going to think about work when you're married with kids. So it's just so important to think about, how can I, right now in this season of my life, value and show up and make sure my priorities show up in my schedule.
And it's important to not live in what someone else has told you your mindset should be.
Correct.
Like, your mindset's your mindset.
Yeah.
So and I've been guilty of, you know, looking at people that play video games too much, or in my opinion, too much, or sleep too much, or just relax on the weekend. And for many years, I'd kind of look at that of like, man, you're lazy and you're wondering why you're not more successful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's it's not right, because they're allowed to do whatever they want. But my whole thing has been, it's okay to have freedom and do certain things. And like you said, building those in advance of that, your mindset's your mindset. And you don't have to just model what the world tells you is the right balance. Because I found in my life, the balance is nonstop changing. There are times that work takes a little bit more priority week by week, depending on what's happening, because of just what's going on. And then there are times that you have to get away from it. But I've realized the best thing I can do is just not pay attention to what anyone tells me. Like, I could care less, you know, what you think of my work-life balance. I care about what my wife thinks about it, what my kids think about
that part.
Because who's to say what a work-life balance is, right? It's different for every person. And the more and more that we could just know, is it right for me, for my current phase, and for the people that matter most to me? Would they say I have balance? If they do, then I don't care if anyone else, because they don't, you know, they don't see that. But that is a good point of just trying to think about it in advance, because if you always kind of are in a mindset where you're nonstop working, then it's going to be even harder to start to even add other things in. And you're never going to be able to have time for a relationship. You're never going to be able to have time for hobbies, because your life was always work when you were single.
So more so, time is freedom.
Total.
And being able to have the freedom to prioritize your priorities, which is really, we have significantly more control over these things, I think, than we sometimes give ourselves credit for. But then the other main thing I'm taking away from this point is that it's important to not look at what you perceive, whether it's, let's say you follow somebody on social media and you're like, well, it looks like they're doing this, this, and this, but you never get to see, like, social media is,
you're seeing 2% of their life. Like,
and it's the 2% that they want you to see. It's why there are people that are extremely successful and famous that commit suicide. It's like,
you're like, how could they ever do that? Like, they have all the money in the world. So?
And that's why it's just like, you got to think about, you know, even prioritizing your own mental health, and which I'm glad is becoming a little bit more like talked about nowadays, because that was not talked about
No.
Our parents' generation, definitely not the generation before them, for sure not. All right, that was a lot of good stuff to process and to think about. Yes. And our next one, number 2. Ooh, I'm really excited about this one. It is, if I want it done right, I have to do it myself.
Oh, that's a banger.
Oh, yeah.
That one is a huge struggle for people. It was a huge struggle for me.
Same.
And I think we can help. So
we absolutely can help. So we'll see you on that one.
Stay tuned. Next episode coming soon.